Here, my name's Brad Pribino. I'm professor of Old Testament here at the seminary, if I haven't met you. And it's a privilege to introduce, as our final presenter, Melinda Gardner. And I've got her written out bio that she sends. I'll read a couple elements of that and go off of that. But Melinda, that's Melissa would be my wife. Melinda Journes Gardner is the longest serving CareNet PCC, Pregnancy Care Center, director in the nation, and I would guess in Canada as well. That's a guess there. But Melinda was a part of Apple Pregnancy Care Center starting in Eau Claire, Wisconsin in 1981. And there are some folks in our room that weren't even born at that point. And she has, I was, but she has directed this ministry going on 35 years. And has been a part of the blessing of many people and a community through that time. I first met Melinda, I don't know exact time, but somewhere, either in one of two places, either at Bethesda Lutheran Brethren Church in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where we attended as we were worshipped as I was in college. I first came into Lutheran Brethren through that church, and Melinda and her husband Dan are members there. Her daughters, Katie and Kelsey, were with her still at that point. And it was either there or through campus ministry, which Melinda would often come to and speak, and often on a number of topics. And I remember some specifically on healthy relationships. I'm guessing you've probably given some of those talks dozens, if not hundreds of times, in campus ministries and in churches and in schools. One of the things that I have appreciated and respected most in my relationship with Melinda, just seeing her work within her ministry, is her commitment and her love for the church. And in our conversations kind of leading up to this time, this session here, she has spoken about her and her love for the church, and that God works through the church, and a strong desire for a partnership with the churches in providing care and extending mercy, and our theme, Christ's mercy, to those who are hurting, those who are affected, all sorts of people affected by crisis pregnancies. And I'm going to invite up Pastor Paul Larson, who's a former pastor. He's the current president of the Church of the Lutheran Brethren and former pastor at Bethesda Lutheran Brethren Church. And he's going to just offer a couple of words, comments on his partnership with Apple.
Thank you, Professor Pribino. So I'm glad to be here too, and this has been energizing for me to sit and listen. When Dr. Press said the art of Lutheran theology is not in separation but distinction, my head's been swimming around that pretty excitedly for a couple of days, and when I think about the distinction of law and gospel and the distinction of the two kingdoms, and I get excited thinking about our position in the Lutheran Brethren. I think we're wonderfully positioned as we think about a body that understands the not separation but distinction of the priesthood of the ordained and the priesthood of all believers. And when I think about the not the separation but the distinction of faith and piety, I've really appreciated this time, and I'm blessed by that thought. I'm going to continue to process that. But this morning, I have my friend Lindy, and I don't even know quite how to introduce her except to say she's an awfully dear friend and an awfully good person. And what Brad was saying about her partnership with the church, I just watched that for 12 years. That I was really blessed to be her friend and pastor in Eau Claire at Bethesda. I think I made it to most of the Apple roles and then Walk for Life that she had, and I know it's a small thing, but one thing that it was a fundraiser in September when the church combined in Eau Claire would get together and kind of rally around Apple's ministry. And I just saw that it was important, how important it was to Lindy, what I saw, kind of Lindy and her husband Dan, faithfully part of the church body and connected in our church body, how important it was for her that the church was partnered with her in Apple. And I honor you, my friend Lindy, for that. As someone working in a parachurch ministry, it's still, you love the church and the church loves you. And I took note, I guess it was yesterday. Some of us are doing Bo Geert's devotional to live with Christ together. It's a Facebook group that Bruce Stumbo has organized, and us, here we are sitting in this J term on mercy, and Bo Gertz led us last week from kind of Christ in the church and the sanctuary, and this week, starting on Sunday, and I guess the second Sunday after Epiphany, I didn't know this, is called Home Sunday, or used to be called Home Sunday. And so this week he's devoted to devotionals of Christ in the home. And the devotional yesterday was about Jesus meeting the woman at the well, and this woman who'd had 5 husbands, and the one she's now with is not her own. And Bo Gertz was saying how Jesus' words just penetrated to her need and penetrated to what he was offering her. And then he says, because he was relating this to how, what happened to this woman's life afterwards, that when she met Christ, we're not told, but we believe that her life took a different shape at home as well, and what a messy story. Had 5 husbands and the 6th one not her. What a messy, how did her life make sense and straighten up after that? We're not told, but we certainly believe that the love of Jesus mattered and spoke to that and changed her. And Bo Gertz says of that, he says, we aren't given the opportunity to hear how this Samaritan woman put her life back together. The Gospels don't provide long lists of instructions for tricky situations such as these. And here's the line that I love. It's not the instructions that solve the problems. Instead, it's a new kind of love. A love first and foremost for Jesus. He doesn't come with a new moral code. He comes with mercy. And where mercy and rejoicing burst forth, there is always something new. That's you in your ministry. Cindy, thank
you. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being here today. It's my pleasure to be with you. I grew up in Fergus Falls. I went to Hillcrest. I started coming to ball games when I was in 2nd grade in this place, and so it's a really special place for me. Chapel and choir and all of those kinds of things. I wanted to tell you something that I've never talked about in public before. I had the opportunity to minister far away from here, across the world, and I can't tell you where, so that might tell you where. And I was doing post-abortion counseling to Christian women in that country. And we were staying in a mission house, and we had to stay up late that night to let somebody in that was also coming to that mission house. And we started to talk to this young man, and he said he was from North Dakota. And I said, oh, really? I grew up in Minnesota. And he said, I went to a Christian high school in Minnesota. I said, you did not go to Hillcrest Academy. And he said, yeah, I did. And I just thought, that is just the coolest story I've always wanted to tell on this campus, about the fact that 2 people who didn't know each other ran into each other in the middle of a very big country, very far away from here, doing ministry. That's the blessing of this place. So just know that about the Lutheran brethren. I also happen to have a love of pastors. As you can tell, Paul is my 2nd favorite pastor because my first one is sitting over there, obviously my father, and I'm just so blessed to be part of that family, let me tell you. I grew up with a lot of godly people coming in and out of our house, and a lot of really interesting conversations about important stuff and things that matter, and I know that was part of the plan that God had for me to get involved in ministry. I did not apply for this job. So I watched my parents feed people on the steps of the Pasadena Parsonage and just all kinds of things. And I knew what ministry looked like without taking everybody home. And that's a really important thing. So it really impacted me. I wanted to start by also telling you how you know your mom's a pregnancy center director. My kids love this, let me tell you. All your t-shirts say Walk for Life on them. You know your mom's a pregnancy center director when your science projects all involve field models, right? You know your mom's a pregnancy director when your service projects were stuffing envelopes with year-end reports. And this is my favorite. You know your mom is a pregnancy center director when she's the one giving the sexuality talk at youth group every year. Oh yeah, true story. So, how I got involved in pregnancy center ministry is part of my story, and I always kind of like to talk about that. I attended college at Trinity in Deerfield, Illinois. I lived with my uncle Gleason Archer, who was a seminary professor there, and his family. So again, was in that that ministry place, and I was on that campus in 1973 when Roe versus Wade was handed down. The Supreme Court set aside all state abortion restrictions. I do not recall hearing one word about that on a Christian college. Now, I don't know if that was about me, which it could have been. I was very busy. Or if it was just not talked about on that Christian college campus. And I wish I knew the answer to that now, but I don't. I was young and oblivious, and it didn't affect my life in any way, shape, or form. So fast forward to 1980, I had been married for 5 years, and we had just had our first daughter, Caitlin, born on April Fool's Day, which is always fun. Bethesda showed a 5-night film series by Dr. Francis Schaeffer and C. Everett Koop called Whatever Happened to the Human Race. Are you familiar with it? A lot of you are. That film changed my life. It was about abortion and infanticide and euthanasia. And I remember the night, I always get a little choked up about this. I remember the night they talked about abortion. And I had just had this baby 2 months before. And it really affected me. My husband said he recalls that I really just cried that night and said, I have to do something. I don't know what that looks like. But I had no choice in the matter. That's what God did in my life. And so it was the beginning of a really big, long adventure, let me tell you, that I didn't realize what it would look like. I had the incredible opportunity to meet Dr. Francis Schaeffer on this campus when he spoke here, and we had dinner, and I was able to tell him that he was part of the reason I was a pregnancy center director. That was a pretty cool thing. Christian Action Council was just starting crisis pregnancy centers in this country, and we were one of the very first ones opened in Eau Claire. And I think that says a lot about our community. I really do. That it was that's just the kind of place the town I live in is. And I wanted to save babies. That was my thing. Let me tell you, that was what it was about for me. And then women started telling me their stories. That was hard. God really used that to change my heart. And we're going to talk about that today. Talk about how to extend mercy and not judgment to those people. They were in so much pain and so wounded and filled with such regret and shame that the last thing they needed was my condemnation or yours. So, 33 years later, we continue to learn and grow and are stretched and challenged in this ministry. And I hope to bring you inside a pregnancy center today and to let you know all the wonderful things that are being done all over, not just the United States, but the world. There are pregnancy centers being started all over the world. There's a great group in Grand Rapids, Michigan called Life International that does those kinds of things, and I'm sure there are others. And I also hope to be able to just sort of help you understand the really difficult subject of abortion. I know some of you who go to Bethel heard the article read this week written by a pastor called Why I Hate Sanctity of Human Life Sunday. And he talks about how hard it is to talk about that in front of people. I want you to understand that every single time I speak about abortion, I am aware that I am talking to someone who has been affected by that. or who has participated in that. I once told that to a pastor, and he said, "Really?" And a couple of weeks later, he came back and said, "I totally get it now. I totally understand. You need to know that there are people in your pews who have never told one soul their story. And so every time you're talking about abortion, that you need to make sure that you have that heart and that you are talking to them about grace and mercy and forgiveness. Choose your words really, really carefully. They need to know where they can find healing and forgiveness, and not the church needs to be a place to provide that and be a safe place for that, and to know where to find help for that. And that's what pregnancy centers are all about. We're the church in your community, as Paul was talking about. You know what? It is so important to me when a pastor shows up at our walk, and Pastor Paul came after he resigned, before he moved to our walk this year, and I was just blown away to see him. I was so thrilled that when your pastor, when you guys show up, it says to your congregation, this matters. And you're not just giving lip service. You're actually saying, this is important to me personally. The Evangelical Free Church pastor in our community has been incredibly involved and has come to the walk over and over again. He had his leg amputated this past year, and he was at my walk 9 months later. That's amazing. And that says to his congregation and also to us, we love you and we're in this with you. And it says that to the church for sure. We're a mission field where people who don't feel safe in a church can come, because they don't know that's who we are until they walk in that door. We're a place where Christians from the local community can minister every single week by driving 10 minutes from their house and showing up and caring for people. We have somewhere between 20 and 40 volunteers at any given time. And the volunteers who actually work with our clients go through a really extensive training. It's 8 weeks, 3 hours each evening. It's about counseling skills. We've actually had counselors go through it and say, I learned stuff in this training because it's so well done. Teaching people how to listen and how to talk and how to confront and just how to be compassionate, and what does that young woman look like? Because we all have this idea that the woman with a crisis pregnancy she's 18 and she's in high school and she's not married and all of that kind of stuff, and that is true, but that's not everybody. Let me tell you that we see people from all walks of life, from in all ages. You can have a crisis pregnancy and be in your 40s, and you can be married and be in a crisis pregnancy. Don't forget that. It's not just that. We see the great majority of the women and men that we see in our center are out of high school and living together. But they're still surprised when they're pregnant. It's true. It's absolutely true. We're always sort of like, really? You didn't know that was going to happen, right? But I love the fact that we can work with other Christians from other churches. It's one of the only ways the church does that, you guys. We don't talk about doctrine in our pregnancy center. You sign a statement of faith that says, I believe this and this and this. And that's the doctrine. That's it. I believe that Jesus Christ is my Savior. I will not refer for abortion. Those kinds of things. I will keep confidentiality. And that we work with a lot of really amazing Christian women and men in our ministry, and have for a long time. People donate things to us or pray for us, or that there's a lot of different ways they can get involved. I think the issue of abortion is important to all of us. you might be like me in college where you're like, yeah, not really on my radar screen. I don't really think about that much. But abortion is one of the things that touches our culture in a way that I don't think most people understand. And I'm going to talk a little bit about post-abortion stress and hopefully help you to understand that a little bit more. It affects women and men at a rate of 1 million to 1.5 million a year. The shame, the grief, the pain affects everybody. It affects you as a wife and as a husband and as a parent, every part of your life. One of my good friends, she was the first woman that I ever went through the post-abortion Bible study with. She called me. She had been a volunteer at Apple. And she called me one day and said, I need help. I had this abortion, and I realized the day I had my 3-year-old in like this, my arms around him. He'd done a 3-year-old thing, okay? You know what 3-year-olds do? And she had her arms around him, and she said, I was like shaking him and going, I can't believe you did that. And she went, are you nuts? This is scary. You are so angry. Guess what? She wasn't angry at that 3-year-old. She was so angry at herself and what she had done all those years ago. And she came and went through that post-abortion Bible study, and it totally changed her life. I brought them with me. If you haven't taken a look, there are a number of different kinds. There's a men's post-abortion study. There's a women's. There's a new one that we use from the Calgary Pregnancy Center, because the Forgiven and Set Free, if you've ever looked at it, it is a very intense Bible study. The second chapter is about the character of God. It usually takes us 2 weeks to go through it, because it takes these women hours to look up all these verses. It's about who God really is, because guess what? You can't find healing and wholeness if you don't know who He is. And so that's the foundation for that one. But we found that women who've come to the center who don't have any scriptural background at all look at that, and they just, we've actually lost some women because they're like, I can't, I don't know where Mark is, and so there's another one that's called Living in Color that gets into the biblical aspect in a little bit farther on. And the first woman I ever used it with came to know the Lord. Just that, it was just amazing to watch. I went to a local high school. The Christian counselor there called me and said, we've got a girl who needs you. Will you come up and see her every week? And they pulled her out of class every single week, and I did post-abortion Bible study in that counseling, in that room with her. And she came to know the Lord and was a changed girl. One day I often bring Christian music to women who've had post-abortion counseling. And one day she started playing music for me. Christian music, said, listen to this song. Just was so cool. And when I left her the last time I ever saw her, I looked at her and said, I love you. And she said, I love you too. And you just go, okay, we spent about 9 weeks together, and it was so intense and so amazing. And God changed that young woman's life through that incredible material. What a amazing thing to be involved in. Here's what every single woman who's had an abortion that came for post-abortion counseling has said to me. I know God forgives me, but I can't forgive myself. Absolutely every single woman has said that to me. And we get to a point where we talk about if they really understand that God forgives them. Are you saying that your standards are higher than His? Because really, that's the truth. They're saying, I need to punish myself a little bit longer, and they will, and they do. And they'll, like I said, it affects marriages. We had she wasn't that young. We had a woman who came in who actually, a lot of times they come in to go through our training and we find out that they're post-abortive and you don't work with clients until you've gone through post-abortion counseling. I don't want any surprises for anybody. And she had married the guy that had really forced her into an abortion as a college student, and they had 3 more kids. And it came out in that post-abortion counseling that she didn't trust him and hadn't forgiven him and was really upset. Let me read to you something that I read to her that changed everything for her. I have a couple of articles that I keep in my office that were written by men about their abortions. Because I think most women think, well, it didn't happen to him in the same way, so he's okay. Let me have you hear somebody's heart here. This one is called "A Face is Missing in My Family Portrait." I'm going to only read a little bit about it a little bit of it to you. But they were talking about an ultrasound, and he was with some Christian friends, and he said, after dinner we moved to the living room and began to share. A Christian brother I had met on this trip admitted encouraging the aborting of his unborn child because he feared the impact a baby would have on his lifestyle. As he wiped away tears, another told how abortion cost him his marriage and everything he had worked for. Both had seen the baby as mere tissue, disposable without consequences. When the reality of their actions soaked in, neither could shake off the guilt. Blown away by their confessions and struggling with my untold story, I cried with them. Confession is said to be good for the soul, and I could no longer keep my dark secret. With deep emotion, I told of getting a girlfriend pregnant and asking my parents for advice. They urged me to have her get an abortion and to be done with it. Not wanting the responsibility of support payments, I wrote a check and told my girlfriend to handle it. She was devastated. I never winced and wrote off her hysteria to being screwed up. I was wrong. I was the one who was screwed up. I first realized how I had failed in my obligation to God and as a man when I saw the ultrasound of my son Chase, now 4. Seeing my little boy in the womb, I felt an immense sorrow and began to sob uncontrollably. Only 3 years earlier, for my selfish convenience, I had abandoned a child to the cruel hands of an abortionist. If only someone had been there for me when I sought help, my family picture wouldn't be missing one of God's children. I begged him for forgiveness. That Sunday night, 9 men sat, Christian men, guilt-ridden, sad, and repentant. 3 of us were part of the national sickness that allows 4,000 defenseless babies to be killed every day in this country. Abortion is not just a women's issue. Men are the fathers of these children. Men as well as women are tasked by God to provide for and to protect the innocent. And he talks about standing for this in the church. That story and this was in the Washington Post in 1995. It's called Remembering Thomas, Responsibility, Guilt, and a Child Who Never Was. And this guy talks about, I don't know anyone, he says, who in his or her heart doesn't hate abortion. But he said, I like prayer. It's all I have left, and pain. When the abortion was performed, I was out of town on business too. I made sure of that. Whatever physical, emotional, and spiritual agony the woman suffered, I was not by her side to support her. I turned my face away. My behavior was, in all respects, craven, immoral. For some instinctual reason or just imaginatively, I've come to believe that it was a boy, a son whom I wanted killed because at the time his experience would have inconvenienced me. I'd had my fun. He didn't fit into my plans. His name, which is carved on my heart, was Thomas. The feelings of responsibility and guilt are undiminished by the fact that the woman had full legal authority to make the decision on her own, either way, without consulting me or even informing me. In fact, she consulted in an open fashion reflecting our shared responsibility, and I could have made a strong case for having that child. Instead, I urged her along the path of death and skipped town. It's not a lot of help either, emotionally or spiritually, that the high priests of American judiciary have put their A-OK on this particular form of what I personally have come to regard as the slaughter of innocents. After all, it's the task of government to decide whom we may or must kill, and not necessarily to provide therapeutic services afterwards. He says, I feel like a murderer, which isn't to say that I blame anyone else or that anyone else is a murderer. It's just the way I feel. And in all the rationalizations in the world haven't changed this. I still grieve for little Thomas. It is an ocean of grief. From somewhere in the distant path, I remember the phrase from Shakespeare, the multitudinous sea incarnadine, he says. When I go to the river on vacation this summer, he won't be going boating with me in the lovely old boat that I can't really afford to put in the water, but can't bring myself to discard either. He won't be lying on the grass by the tent at night, looking up at the starry sky and saying, "What's that one called, Dad?" Because there was no room on earth for Thomas. He's dead. Excuse me. So, I read these 2 articles to my friend, and she went home that night and had a very long talk with her husband. I believe I probably gave them to her. And guess what? There was a lot of grief and a lot of pain and a lot of guilt in his heart, and it totally changed their marriage and healed their marriage. And she actually credits our pregnancy center for saving their marriage because of that. What an incredible opportunity that we have to go through that with people. I want you to understand that we need, it's not just a matter of telling people you're forgiven. Because as pastors, you know what, that's the truth. What it takes is for them to repent and ask for forgiveness, and it's done. But that's never been my experience. That they need to go through and understand the relief and denial, the grief, the forgiving others, the forgiveness, acceptance. We actually have a memorial service at the end where there's some closure. And we also say, we'll be here for you if you have an anniversary reaction next year. Know that that's a big part of post-abortion trauma. Anniversary reactions is whether it's of the abortion or when the baby was due or whatever. So really big thing. That's one of the reasons you need to know the pregnancy center in your area, because you're not trained to do that, and because there are materials and people who are experts who will help you and will walk people through that, and that is incredibly important. So that's the stuff I wanted to read about a man. I want to read one more thing that just really affected me when I started doing this, and it was about it's written by Carla Gottry, who used to live in Minneapolis, and her husband, and it's a story. It takes about an hour to read. We have it in our waiting room, and every single day somebody starts reading it and they say, "Can I borrow this book?" Because you get involved really, really quickly in it. And we always say yes, because the gospel is clearly laid out in it. And it is about her abortion. And so let me read a couple of things that Carla says. I'm going to start here. I laid back Put my feet in those awful stainless steel stirrups, stared up at the tiling on the ceiling, and tensed. As the doctor inserted the suction device, I thought I would be relieved of my tension, guilt, pain, and uncertainty in an instant. Quick as a flash of lightning, done and over with, hurry up, please. I've heard that for many women, that is the way it is. It may be true for you or someone you know. If so, you don't have to believe one word of what I'm going to say next. For me, it was a moment of excruciating horror, worse than anything I had ever imagined. At this moment, this unwanted tissue, this inconvenient baby-to-be was sucked out of my womb. I honestly knew that something far more significant was happening. Suddenly, everything came to a virtual standstill, and it all happened in slow motion. It was as though a living spirit was leaving my body, a spirit I had birthed at that moment, even though it had not been born in the flesh. I was overcome with sounds and feelings that are almost too complex to explain. It was as if this living being inside of me had not simply left, it had escaped. I sensed a glorious sound, the wind perhaps. Yes, that's it. The spirit escaped in the wind, and at that moment I connected with my baby's spirit as it left my presence. Then I crashed down into a well of silence, emptiness, stillness, pain. No physical pain I had experienced to that day or have experienced in the days since could equal what I felt at that moment. I had no doubt there was an actual human being growing inside of me. This was my baby, and I had chosen to end its life. I knew in an instant that I had made the most tragic decision ever. All I could do was cry out, "Oh God." But I knew he could never hear anyone who had done what I just had done. He could never hear me. That, people, that is what abortion does to women and men. It might not be at that moment like it was for Carla. It might be later, but I have women tell me, you know what, everybody told me this was the right thing to do. My parents forced me, my boyfriend forced me, circumstances forced me. We talk about women's choice. That's the choice. I actually spoke at the University of Wisconsin to the newspaper, or the Reporters Club. They wanted to know how people on both sides of this issue felt like they were handling it. And I said, you know what? I don't like the labels. You use the labels to say something different, and you know it. And I said, if you're going to call me anti-abortion, you need to call them pro-abortion. And a lady stood up in the middle of the audience and started screaming at me, I am not pro-abortion. I am pro-choice. I said, lady, the only choice you want is abortion. That's the choice you're talking about here. We use these labels, and everybody hears them all the time. Do you know what they call a baby in an abortion clinic? Anybody want to guess? There's a few things. What do they call it? What do you think they call a baby in an abortion clinic? I heard tissue. I didn't. Somebody else. I love that one. A POC, a product of conception. And you know, when I speak to youth groups, I ask that question and I say, is it tissue? And they look at me like, we think it is, but we think you want us to say no. And I say, of course it's tissue, so are you. Is it a product of conception? Yes, it is, so are you. Is it a fetus? Yes, so were you. Has anybody said, we're going to have a baby shower for Mary? Her POC is due in a month. Really? Really? That's what we do. We call it something else when we don't want it. And we have told women in this culture, young women, that you can control every aspect of your fertility. And that is a lie. It is a lie. I know many, many women who had babies when they didn't and who don't when they want to. And we just pretend that we can control it all with medicine and with contraception and with all of that stuff. I don't use the term birth control, by the way, because abortion is birth control. So another thought for you, right? It just feels like the worst thing you can ever do. And women sit in our churches. Guess what? God uses abortion to bring women to repentance and to Him. And they never tell their story because they are so filled with shame. And that is the truth. Are you familiar with the group Silent No More? It's a national group that talks about, I had an abortion and I'm going to tell you what it did to me. And I really think that's part of what will change our culture. When women who've had abortions start saying, this is what I did and this is what it costs me. That's a really important thing. I gave you a thing of statistics today. It's from the Answering the Call, John Ensor. If you don't read anything else on abortion, John Ensor's books, this one and Scott Klusendorf, Stands for Life. These books, I get them for like $4. I give them to every high school kid who comes into our office to do a ministry project. You know what? I really believe that that's part of, I really want young people, young Christian kids who show up at a crisis pregnancy center to know it's a safe place, to know what we do, to, be familiar with it, and to be able to argue abortion in a just a smart way, a compassionate way. You don't ever change anybody's mind beating them over the head with the Bible or whatever. You know that. You're pastors. You get it. Though these books are really, really great about, apologetics for the pro-life stand. These are from John Ensor, and I think it's so important that we understand 43% of all American women will undergo at least one abortion by age 45. Doesn't that just blow you away? Just incredible. 1 out of every 6 abortions are performed on women who identify themselves as born-again Christians, and I have actually heard that statistic higher than that. With 1,500,000 women submitting to abortion every year, this equals 250,000 evangelically oriented Christians aborting annually. We're not doing our job when it comes to this, are we? We're going to talk about that a little bit more too. And 58% of all women seeking an abortion reported that they were using some kind of birth control during that month they became pregnant. 50% of all abortions are repeat abortions. Just chew on that a little while. I had one, I'm never doing that again. Pregnant again, here I am again. Abortion is used as birth control in our country. Don't let anybody, because they always want to talk about the rape and incest and something's wrong with the baby, right? That's the two. You know what? That's not why people are having abortions. It has really never been that. So, there is the African American statistics are really interesting too. There's a huge disconnect there, and that's a really important thing to know too. Today, almost every third baby in America is killed by abortion. Wow, it's a really amazing, terrible statistic. Here's some. 64% of American women felt pressured by somebody else. 50% felt rushed or uncertain. 67% received no counseling. You should hear what my post-abortion clients tell me. The counseling they got in the abortion clinic is, do you know what you're doing and do you want to do this? That's it. 79% weren't told about abortion alternatives. 84% said they weren't fully informed, and 65% suffered trauma. They tell me the stories of how They went with their family, they had the abortion, and then we went shopping in the Mall of America on the way home. And I sat on a bench in stunned silence while everybody was at Camp Snoopy or whatever. Just real disconnect in that way. We do need to talk about that. We also need to talk about this. There is another, we've talked about the Christian viewpoint here. Let me talk to you about the fact that this year there were a couple of really lovely articles. Like this one, it was in salon.com. My computer kind of blew up the day this one came out. So what if abortion ends life? Did anybody read this? It was written by somebody that says, Mary Elizabeth Williams, I believe that life starts at conception, and it's never stopped me from being pro-choice. I want you to hear that this is the college campus thought, okay? And professional thought. I know that throughout my own pregnancies, so this woman, I think she has children, I never wavered for a moment in the belief that I was carrying a human life inside me. I believe that's what a fetus is, a human life. And that doesn't make me one iota less solidly pro-choice. She says, here's the complicated reality in which we live. All life is not equal. That's a difficult thing for liberals like me to talk about, lest we wind up looking like death panel loving, kill your grandma and precious baby stormtroopers. Yet a fetus can be a human life without having the same rights as the woman in whose body it resides. She's the boss. Her life and what's right for her circumstances and her health should automatically trump the rights of the non-autonomous entity inside of her, always. You can find the article. It's stunningly sad and awful. And shortly after that, this one came up, and it was written by a man. He says abortion saved his life because a former girlfriend who he didn't want to have a future with decided to have one. So abortion saved his life. So this is the man's, and you can see, look at the, I was so mad when I read this article. I just scribbled all over it. No, yes, life colliding with belief system. He says, there's a reasonable and unsolvable medical debate about exactly when life begins. I'm like, really? I thought that, that debate was there 35 years ago. It's not there anymore. Everybody knows that baby's heart is beating and it has fingerprints and it is an individual created in the image of God. Everybody knows that. But he basically talks about, it needs to be legal, safe, and rare. I'm like, if it's not wrong, why should it be safe? I mean, why should it be rare? That's another one of those sort of disconnects, isn't it? I fell into a bad situation. I'm like, yeah, you didn't fall, buddy. Okay? I fell into a bad situation. And abortion was there to save me and keep on a path toward building a strong family that I now have. Wow. You need to understand that that's the, I think for the most part, people who grew up in a church really believe in the sanctity of life and that abortion is wrong. And they do it, if they do it anyway, that's part of it's so incredibly difficult. I knew what I was doing and I did it anyway. And how do I live with that? But these are people who say, this is my truth. And it's a little bit different in all of that. It's really complicated. It's been legal for over 40 years. Most, some of you have never lived in a time when abortion wasn't legal. And if it's legal, it must be okay. There is absolutely that thought process in people. And between the pressure and from others and circumstances, I just want to be unpregnant. We have a brochure in our office that says there's no such word as unpregnant. Because that's what I want to be, unpregnant. I've been told by pregnancy center directors where there are Christian colleges that the Christian kids abort at a really high rate. And do you know why? And that is another thing that we need to talk about in our churches. That, you know what, the shame of being in a church, the pastor's kid, whatever. What is your church a safe place for a pregnant girl to walk in? That's, I'm going to read some stuff about that today. Why do so many churchgoers have abortion? By Brian Fisher. And he says, several months ago, one of my coworkers was speaking with a Christian university campus ministry about the issue of abortion. The Christian university campus minister dismissed the topic with a wave. He said, abortion isn't prevalent at our school. Contraception is widely available, but our students also take sexual purity to heart. I was a bit suspicious of the answer, so I spoke with a recent graduate of the same university about his thoughts. I suspect that 1 in 3 women on campus have had an abortion, she said matter-of-factly. It may be higher. Christian kids don't want to deal with the shame of pregnancy brings, so they abort instead of telling their parents. And that is the truth. That is stuff that I've seen, absolutely. According to a study by Guttmacher, almost 3/4 of women obtaining abortions in 2008 reported a religious affiliation. Almost 3/4 said that they had some kind of a religious affiliation. So, that's a really, really big deal. When I talk in schools and youth groups, I always talk about what Scripture says about children. Because guess what? Christian kids, and in particular Catholic kids, think that God made them pregnant to punish them for having sex. That's absolutely, especially Catholic kids, but Christian kids too. And I tell kids, guess what? That's what's supposed to happen. That's how you get pregnant. And we have disconnected that. Because sexuality we've disconnected it from childbirth really well in our culture. I ask kids, what does the Bible say children are? And usually they kind of know. What do you guys know? Tell me, what does the Bible say children are? A blessing? A gift? A heritage? Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. Does it ever say it's a punishment? It never does. It never does. God, it's a blessing. It's a gift. And we have totally disconnected that. And so I always make sure when I'm speaking to young people about sexuality, I do love sex and healthy relationships. I don't show you pictures of STDs. Your kids, pictures of STDs. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I talk about relationships and how sex changes that relationship. I ask the kids, and if there's adults in the room, I ask them too. But how long the studies say the average high school relationship lasts once kids start having sex? Anybody want to venture a guess? You're probably going to be wrong, so I'll do it. It's 2 weeks. And you know what? And the kids know it because they watch it. The adults are all going, oh yeah, probably a couple months or whatever. It's 2 weeks because it changes the dynamics, doesn't it? All of a sudden the girl's like, you're going out with your friends on Friday night? Guess what? You know what? I thought we were together. And it changes everything. And so we talk about those kinds of things, and we talk about the fact that you get pregnant by having sex. That's what's supposed to happen, and that contraception does not always prevent that, especially when you're a teenager and you're not using it anyway. If you think kids are high school kids, hardly, not happening, and it's not like they don't know about it. Believe me, they know about it. It's just not going to happen to them. They're high school kids, right? So, really, really important. I do a game that is called a signature social where I hand out. I should have brought it for us today. We could stand up and walk around the room, but I'd never get you back. We do a game where I hand out pieces of paper, and you get to do whatever it says on your paper. Somebody has a plus sign, and they're supposed to sign a couple pieces of paper and let other people sign their paper. Some of them have an M, and they're only supposed to sign one other person's paper. And I always make sure it's a guy and a girl, always. And some of them have an A, and they don't sign anybody's paper. And then I say, Dave, do you have a plus on your card? And you stand up, and I say, I'm really, really sorry to tell you, but you are HIV positive. And of course, all the kids are, laughing kind of nervously. And then I say, read the names on your card. And they go, oh no, And so we find out who signed his card. And then we find out who signed their card. And we watch how this STD has spread through the group. You didn't have to sign Dave's card to get it. But you signed somebody who signed Dave's card. You see how that all works, okay? I always do it when I'm doing it. The leaders have to participate, and the kids the parents, if they're there, have to participate. And it's always a really interesting, fun thing. The M, a guy and a girl only sign each other, so they're monogamous or married. Inevitably, somebody messes up, and they, I signed his card too. Well, guess what? You just had an affair, and you exposed your spouse to somebody else. So that's always just another great lesson. And the A one, you're not supposed to sign anybody else's, is for abstinence. Or, as the last young boy, when I said, what do you think that means? He said, alone. I loved it. I was like, well, maybe. But what a cool thing. I speak at the local middle school health classes, which is just so cool. And the last time I did it, there was a substitute teacher in this class, and she said, there's 3 girls in this room you're going to have a lot of trouble with because they don't listen to anybody, and they're just a bunch of troublemakers. I don't know who they were because they were totally involved in the entire thing, and the kids were standing up to talk to me at the end of it. And all I talked to them about was waiting until marriage and healthy sexuality and love. What is love? What does that mean? And when I left, I was walking down the hall, and I felt this tap on my shoulder, and this 8th grade boy said, I just wanted to thank you for coming. I really needed to hear what you had to say. I was like, do I have a great job or what? What an incredible thing that God does. I didn't talk about God in that class. Every principle was a godly principle. And those kids, you know what? They want somebody to talk to them about that stuff and to say, what are you doing? Don't do that. One of the things is if we taught drug education, or I always say it wrong. If we taught sex education like we teach drug education, it's the opposite. If we taught drug education like we taught sex education, we'd say, don't use drugs, they're really bad for you, but we know you're going to, so use a clean needle. And you go to the nurse and get it. She'll give you the clean needle. That's how we teach sex education. We know you're going to do this, you can't possibly control yourself, so make sure you get a condom from the school nurse. And I tell kids, I think that's an offensive message to you. And if you don't know how to sexually control yourself before you get married, what makes you think you're going to know how to do that after? Don't you want to be with somebody that you know you can trust and that you know is trustworthy? And we talk about stuff like that, and they listen. What an amazing thing. That's why pregnancy centers exist. I go in and I say, my job here today is to keep you out of my office. That's what we're going to do. So let's talk a little bit about the day-to-day. We do free pregnancy testing, confidential, everything that we do. Education and support. We talk about fetal development. We talk about abortion procedures. I didn't bring it in. It's in there. We have this fantastic magazine that talks about sort of everything that we do at our pregnancy center. I think it's called Before You Decide. Just incredible information for these young people. And they come in and they're terrified. There's no doubt about it. Many of them are, my parents are going to kill me. Guess what? Your parents are going to be upset if you're 16 and you're pregnant. Yeah. But are they going to kill you? No, they're not going to kill you. They're going to love you and they're going to help you through this. and so will we. We will be here as long as you need us. There are consequences to every single thing you choose. Let's talk about what that is. I just love being able to do that. We had a young woman call us about a year ago from the university, really freaking out that I think she probably knew she was pregnant. They usually know before they come to us. They've already done, you can get a pregnancy test at the dollar store. They almost always have done 10 of them before they come to us. And so, sometimes we get those I need an abortion calls, and we say, that's not what we do, but we would really like to talk you through that decision. And many times they don't show up. It's so hard because you don't want them to, sometimes they think you do abortions at your pregnancy center. So we say, hey, you know what, don't make that decision on your own. Let us help you. Let us help you understand the questions and stuff. We have a program that started probably about 8, 9 years ago. We had been doing pregnancy testing and loaning out stuff to young women and men for a really long time. And I remember just going, we don't know what's even happening to these girls. I'm not okay with this. And so we were kind of trying to figure out, how do we do this well? And knew it involved diapers and more staff and more space. And this young woman came in to the center. Everybody was my staff was all in the back and stuff. I don't usually see the clients that walk in the front door, although my office is right there because I want to know what's going on. And she walked in and she wanted diapers. She had 3 little kids at home. She lived with a guy who watched TV all day. And she had really dirty fingernails and really greasy hair and just no light in her eyes. And I remember going, I'm giving her a pack of diapers? Are you kidding me? That's not good enough. And she said, I can't wait till my kids grow up and leave me. I was like, that's not good. So I was like, that's the end of that. We're not ever doing that again. I'll give her diapers, but we purchased a curriculum that was started by a pregnancy center that, oh man, we have a lot of curriculum. Here's part of, see all that little tiny print? That's some of the lessons that you can do at our center. Smoking and pregnancy, car seat safety, newborn care, amazing talents of your baby, reducing the risk of SIDS. It goes on. It's like every single thing the parents need to know that most of us didn't know it. We actually have a high school teacher who's on our board who used to work with the men in class, and he said, I wish I'd known this when I had my kids, and he called himself the baby whisperer. I loved it. So they can pick from this. They get to come in. The first thing we do with them is a getting acquainted. And it's a big, long questionnaire, very personal questions. Are your parents married? Were you sexually abused? Was there drugs and alcohol in your home? Just all kinds of really personal questions. There is almost no one that isn't freely giving of that information, which I always find really interesting. We say, hey, you don't have to answer any of these questions. There's something about a pregnancy center that is safe, I'm always really surprised that it's really calm in our office. It's decorated in a really it's just a calm place, and people say that all the time, and we know that's because the Holy Spirit's there, and that's just the way it is. So they come in and they feel safe, and the people that work with them are amazing and incredible, and so they tell you those things. After that, they get to choose from this, and they start coming in, and we really love it when they can see the same staff person or volunteer every week, because you're developing a relationship in a way that you're not. Otherwise, you're starting over. They develop friendships, and they learn, and they get mentored, and then, okay, they're walking in when they're pregnant, and then I know when that baby is coming in with them for the first time, because the entire staff is out there going, oh, look at your baby, and I get to come out and be part of that, and it's a pretty incredible thing. You guys, we helped somebody, we saved a life, whether it's actually someone who was coming in to have an abortion or not. That the church was part of that. Let's change this cycle. And we continue to do that over and over again every single day. It changed everything when we did that. It also is difficult. You know, I was out in the hall yesterday listening to the women talk about the safe place, because we deal with women who are abused, you know, and on drugs. I've been in jail with clients. You know, I mean, I've brought women to maternity homes who were homeless. You name it, we've done it. And I understand how all of that stuff is and how difficult it is. If you've never read an article called Messy, Dirty, Costly Ministry, I would really suggest you go online and find it. You can find it at, I think it's Christianity Today. And the guy who wrote it talks about the fact that somebody said, I think the biggest sin of the church is that we don't say, pastors and leaders are not on their knees crying out to God, bring us the drug addicted, bring us the prostitutes, bring us destitute, bring us the gang leaders, bring us those with AIDS, bring us the people nobody else wants, whom only you can heal, and let us love them in your name until they are whole. He said, I had no response. I was undone. I was the chief of sinners. I had never prayed, not once, for God to bring such people to my church. You know why? You know why? Because it's hard. And they lie to you. And someone stole our hand lotion out of the bathroom last week, okay? That's just what happens. We would have been happy to give it to them. But all of a sudden, the hand lotion bottle's gone, and you just go, yeah, you know, I know. The pregnancy center in Milwaukee had art stolen off their walls. That's who we're dealing with. And what an amazing opportunity that we can love those people. They're not in your churches, but guess what? Sometimes they come after they meet the people at the pregnancy center. We have that happen often. We have young women who are like, you know, I'd kind of like to go to a church. Sometimes they go to ours, sometimes they go to another one. We have a list of churches that we give them, and we had a lot of, how do we do that? As a pregnancy center, we said that every year we're going to make it the churches that support this ministry are. There you go. You know, obviously I want them to come to my church. But there's a lot of great churches out there, and maybe Bethesda is not the right place for every single one of them. Although we have them there every once in a while, somebody shows up and stands up and gives a testimony, and you're like, that's pretty incredible. They are loved and they know it, and it changes who they are. We require them to be on time, or we dock their points. Because they come in, I told you, you know, we have this curriculum, that when they come in, they get 5 points every week. And they can buy diapers and baby clothes and cribs and car seats and all of that kind of stuff. Everything they need. And if you think that hasn't changed some minds, where you take this girl downstairs and you show them 5 rooms full of everything they need to have a baby, they go, oh, I guess I'm not going to be alone in all of this. I'm going to get educated and supported and rewarded with the material things that I need. What an amazing thing that is. And that all comes from people in our community and our churches who walk in. One day I was in the front with a young woman, and this woman from one of the local churches walked in with that many diapers, okay? She could barely carry them. And this client looked at me and said, why are they doing that? Why would they bring us diapers? She doesn't know me. And I say, that's what the church looks like. You need to know it. You need to know it. So we also, if they don't keep their appointments, which is a huge issue, messy, dirty, costly ministry, okay, they're not responsible, or their car didn't work, or, you know, they forgot, or, well, you know what, you've wasted 3 hours of my staff's time. So you can't make appointments anymore. You can come to class, or we'll give you another chance, or you can call the day of and see if there's appointments. It's about responsibility and accountability and teaching them to learn to do the right thing and not take advantage of people. I remember there was a young woman who was always late. And I heard her talking out in the front, and she was like, I don't know how to be on time. And I started punching out stuff on my computer and walked out and said, I heard you talking about this. Here's some really practical things that may help you. And the next week she was early and said, those papers changed my life. And you know what, guys? They do. She could not lose a job. It might have been a life-changing thing for her. Because for the first time, she's going to know how to be on time. Wow. One young woman, I want to tell you about her. I'm going to call her Jenny. You would recognize her from the chip on her shoulder that comes in with her every single time she walks in. She was angry and sad and hurt and entitled and, so hard to deal with. She was late enough that we finally, or not late, didn't show up enough that we finally said, not making any appointments for you. And she made an appointment with me to come in and ask for mercy. She said, I really need to be here. Can you give me another chance? And we always say yes, of course we'll do that. And she started to keep her appointments. She's seeing a woman from, I'm going to tell you because some of you, she's seeing Kathy Kashava from Bethesda every single week. And it has changed her. Every once in a while I'll see her. I'm like, she smiled at me today. That was just stunning. Well, last week, she sent a nomination for Kathy to the Sunshine Award at WEAU-TV because Kathy had brought so much sunshine in her life. She prays for me and thinks about me even when I'm not here. I couldn't even believe it. This was a woman who doesn't do nice things for anybody else, okay? So Kathy and this young woman were going to meet the day after this came to our office. And when she came in, I said, I saw what you did. Would you give that award to Kathy and let me read it out loud? And can I take a picture for our Facebook page? And she said, yes. We were all in tears in the back room. What an incredible thing. You know what? Will that girl ever come to know the Lord? I think she will. I really do. Because she's seeing something she's never seen before. We have just, that's about mercy, isn't it? What an incredible thing. Just bearing one another's burdens. What an amazing, incredible thing that is. Another really, really lovely thing is the fact that we learn to depend on the Lord for everything. Let me tell you. And that's also the messy, dirty, costly ministry. If you're doing ministry and you got it all under control, you maybe really don't need to depend on the Lord for any of it, right? I got this. I've been trained. That's not what ministry is all about. It's about watching God do stuff that's so far and above what you thought could happen. And we see that. The amazing financial supporters who write checks for us and pray for us. And it's also an incredible testimony to the community. We have social workers that call and say, can we come for a tour? You wouldn't believe what the clients that you see are saying about you to us. We want to know what you're doing. I love that. I know that there are many of you who don't live in a place where there's a pregnancy center, but if you do, get involved. They will be shocked. Call your local pregnancy center if you don't know them and say, this is Pastor so-and-so, and I'd like to come in and meet with you and see how we can work together and take a tour. They're there to serve you just as much. And when Brad was talking, when he was introducing me, it made me think of, I'll tell you, I go to directors' conferences with thousands of other pregnancy center directors, and when they start bashing pastors, man, I'm all over them. Like, just a minute. They can feel that. They know that you're mad at them, you're not doing enough for our pregnancy center. Pastors are very, very busy people. And we need to respect your time. And yes, we need to say, here's what we can do for you. And here's what we'd love you to know about us and how you can support us. How many of you have done the baby bottle boomerang for your pregnancy center? it's a pain, isn't it? Now, maybe not as much for the pastor, but it's a lot of work for people. Those bottles, and you're worried about where they are and all that stuff. I get that. We raised almost $20,000 last year. We have 10 churches doing it right now. And thank you for doing that, because we know it's not an easy fundraiser. It gets people who would never write you a $20 check to put $20 in a bottle and give it back to you. It's an incredible blessing to our pregnancy center. So thank you for doing that, and I hope that you'll continue to do it, even though we know it's a lot of work. Believe me, it's a lot of work for us too. I opened one of those bottles many years ago, and there was a letter in it from a girl who said, "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for your ministry. My parents were going to abort me." And we all became Christians, and thanks for being there. I sent that girl a note and said, "Can I tell your story?" And 2 days later, her dad called me and said, "Can I bring her in? Because I want her to see the center." Amazing stories. Happens all the time. So, we've had young women come from our supporting churches, pregnant, parents calling and saying, "Help," who've always said, "I always thought this ministry was important, but now we need you." When a young girl from your youth group becomes pregnant, what happens? What happens is she embraced and accepted and loved and encouraged for the choices that she's going to make now and the fact that she didn't choose abortion? Or do we make sure she knows what she did wrong, okay, right? We do that really well. I've had people from churches call and say, "Should we have a shower for this girl? Because isn't that sending the wrong message to the other kids?" I'm like, she needs that shower more than anybody else needs that shower. Please have a shower. The other kids aren't going to go, "Oh, cool, she got baby clothes." Right? That is not what's going to happen. Everybody knows. It means I'm a sinner and I'm still allowed to come to my church. That's what it means, and we need to remember that. There's a group in Texas called Embrace Grace. Amy Ford spoke at our directors conference this year. She was a Christian girl who got pregnant, went to an abortion clinic with her boyfriend because they were not going to tell their parents. "I can't possibly tell my parents this." And she kind of hyperventilated in the abortion clinic, and they wouldn't do the abortion on her. Said, "You're not doing this today, go home." And she walked out and said, "We're not doing this." Told her parents, who of course were upset and loved her and accepted her and walked through this with her. And she started a ministry because she said, "The people in my church didn't know what to do with me. They didn't talk to me. They looked away when I was there. They ignored me. Nobody said, 'Congratulations, you're going to be a mom.'" It's awkward, and we don't know what to do with that. But we need to be that safe place for the Christian kids so they don't drive to an abortion clinic. Don't forget that. I want to read a little bit from another young woman in here who says she was the pastor's kid. She was a pastor's kid. Her Phillips Craig and Dean. Her father is dean of Phillips Craig and Dean, the musical group, and he has a big church in Texas. He said it complicated things a tad bit that my father was not only the pastor, but part of the well-known Christian group Phillips Craig and Dean. I was terrified that as soon as his congregation found out I was pregnant, they would leave his church. That's the message she got from growing up in the church, you guys. I would only be able to hide my growing belly for a little while longer. People were already starting to talk. One Sunday morning, my father decided to put the rumors to rest. He said, "Danielle, if people want to leave my church because you got pregnant outside of marriage, then I don't want them at my church." He told his congregation that I was indeed pregnant. And not only was I pregnant, but I was going to give up my baby for adoption. I felt guilty that he was the one who had to share my mistake. Then he told me what happened next. The entire church stood up and started to applaud. They weren't applauding my father. They were applauding me. How could people who barely knew me support my sin? After the service, dozens and dozens of people came to my father and showered him with encouragement. She started to feel a connection with this baby and decided she wasn't going to place him for adoption. She said, a couple weeks later, after the news about me keeping my baby was official, my dad made an announcement at church. It happened again, but this time the applause was even bigger and louder. The church rose to their feet applauding my decision, and me, I never really looked at this situation as something to applaud, but it was the choices I made after the fact that made these people applaud. I could have had an abortion and kept it secret my entire life. I started thinking, maybe I don't have to be so hard on myself. Maybe I can live my life knowing that I saved a life. God taught me more in the previous 37 weeks than I think I'd ever learned in my whole life. He taught me how to love someone I'd never met. He taught me patience and perseverance. He taught me that I'm a fighter and a selfless person, and that when I put my mind to something, I can accomplish anything I want. God taught me how to fully rely on him, because when I was pregnant, that's all I could do. Most important, he taught me how to release control and let him take the reins. I am never fully going to be in control of a situation. For the first time in my life, I'm okay with that. Nothing is too big for God. That's what churches should be. They should be the mercy and the grace and the hands and the feet of Christ. That's what mercy looks like in a church. I'm going to finish with a quote and have less than 10 minutes. I'd like to do digression day. If you have, thank you. If you have questions, I know sometimes that there are people who are like, I wish you would have talked about this. So I'd like to give you just a couple minutes to do that. The quote is from David Reardon, Making Abortion Rare. He says, before we can develop a healing environment for others, it's essential that we must first heal ourselves. We, the pro-life movement and the church, must learn to replace any traces of judgmentalism with compassion, prejudice with understanding. We must learn to see those who have undergone abortions as not as different from ourselves, but as identical to ourselves. We must find the humility to see that without the overflowing grace of God, under the right conditions and the right pressures, we too would be capable of abortion, if not worse. We also need to remember that our concern for unborn children should always be one with our concern for the unborn child's mother. It's only in serving her needs that we can serve her child. So, what have I not talked to you about that you want to hear today? Anything?
I want to thank you very much. This has been terrific to be here with you and just to hear your passion for loving these women, as well as how God is using in great ways. I just also wanted to speak to this a little bit. Sometimes churches are wondering, well, what can we do? I have a small congregation up in Detroit Lakes, and we wanted to look at how could we help those who maybe cannot keep their baby, but wanted to support that. And so we are having, in February, we're having a Share Love Through Adoption informational meeting in our community. We're going to have it right in the mall in Detroit Lakes on a Thursday evening, and we have 3 adoptive families that are going to come and be a panel to do a Q&A and kind of tell their stories about what they've gone through to be adoptive parents. Also, we are going to have an agency there. Some of you may be aware of them from this area, God's Children Adoption Agency. And so they'll come and talk about, well, okay, now what? And also they do have information and help for those who might be in an unexpected pregnancy.
Right.
So just our way to help this. And here's the surprising thing. As I've talked with people in the community, just even going to the newspaper talking about ads, we have been tremendously supported. And those who so there are those out there that I think they too want to see what can we do to help in this situation. And this is close to my heart because our son and daughter-in-law could not conceive, so they have adopted, and they have adopted 4 children. Right now, ages 5 to 3 months. Busy house. And just to say this, our first grandson was the grandma of a church secretary, and that baby came to us, and our last baby that they just got 3 months ago was born in a prison hospital in Florida. And this has not, this tremendous challenges for these adoptive families to go through, and the finances that it takes. But there again, we've seen God do tremendous work, and how He has provided in this way. So just if I did bring along some handouts if you wanted to see what we're doing, and I just encourage you to just find something that you can do to help to support this.
Absolutely, thank you for that. Yeah, love the single moms in your neighborhood. I mean, even something as simple as that. Adoption is an incredible thing, and women don't want to talk about it. I could never place my baby for adoption because I would love it too much, so I'm going to have an abortion. I have literally heard those words many, many times. I am the aunt of 2 Chinese nieces and a Russian nephew. And we always said that our girls thought babies came from the Minneapolis airport. Because that's where we got ours. So adoption it's just an amazing thing. Thanks for sharing that.
When you were talking earlier about going into schools, my first career was a 7th grade health teacher.
Awesome!
And so I did those for 9 years. And 1 year after we got done talking, relationships, abstinence, all those kinds of things, how marriage, who you marry will affect your life, either positively in major ways. We finished on a Friday, end of the semester. I was getting a new group of kids. That next Monday, little Savannah was her name. Couldn't have been more than 4 feet tall at the time. 7th grader, tiny little thing. She came up to me, Mr. Nordland, after Friday, I went home and I talked to my dad. And so my mom and dad took me out to eat. And then we went to the mall. And my dad bought me she showed me this tiny little ring. Yep. She said, and we talked, and the only one allowed to take this off will be my husband on my wedding night. So it's an encouragement to all of us. They do hear.
Right.
7th graders do get it. They do understand it. And we can't talk to them early enough about the importance of healthy relationships, waiting until marriage, because some will get it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And you know what? I mean, I know I go speak to churches often, but there are parents in our churches who are like, they already know about that. We're not going to talk about that because they hear about it too much. I'm like, you're the only people that are not talking to your kids about this. You need to be the ones who say, and it's not one talk. It's ongoing. When my youngest, who is now 31, was still living at home with us, my husband had never seen a Victoria's Secret commercial if she was in that room. Man, bam. She's like, I'm not watching that with my dad. Are you kidding me? Like, that's a girl who got that whole process of, this is what guys are thinking. She's like, I'm not watching this commercial with my dad in the room. And I loved it, It was just like, you go, girl. I forget that sometimes. I'm like, oh yeah, I should change that. Kelsey would want it. Right? Anybody else? Let me finish with one story. It's a Bethesda story. It's a story about a women's retreat at Bethesda. The first night, we were out at St. Bede's, for those of you who know that, and we'd had this really great session, and women we were having coffee and treats because there's a verse in the Bible, I don't know where it is, it says, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered. Maybe you seminarians know where that is. And we were sitting there, women were sitting around talking, and I came in on a conversation in this dark room with all these women, and the woman that was talking was a woman who had just finished our post-abortion counseling. She had had a couple of abortions. And I heard her talking about it in this group. And I stood in the doorway just praying that God would protect her heart. Because I had other friends who told people in their churches that they'd had an abortion. And they became the woman with the A. You know, I had to leave that church because all they could see was that. And so I was standing in the doorway listening. And I heard her telling the story, and I was just praying for her, and she was talking about it. And pretty soon I heard other women say, me too, me too, me too. And I just remember just going, wow, this is what the church needs to look like on this issue, where it is this safe place where we can say, this is my sin, and this is God's mercy and grace that took me from that. Thank you so much for all that you do as pastors and ministry people, and I just love you, and thanks for your kind attention today. One more thing, I have a CD for you all. It's music. Brad Pribenow produced it for our ministry, and I brought the box. I gotta find it. I think I'll put them out on the table where the coffee is. Please take, I have a bunch. So take what you like and please enjoy it. It's great Christian music, all kinds of different stuff from local artists in Eau Claire. And like I said, Brad produced it for us. It's really well done. So please don't forget your CD because I'd love you to take them. Thanks so much.